Today we replace a dashpot in a 1970 Ford LTD. We consult the shop manual for further information and diagrams. An anti-stall dashpot is a spring-actuated device that controls how quickly the throttle plate decreases after letting go of the gas pedal to prevent stalling. As indicated in this diagram, when the plunger to the left is fully depressed, you adjust the specified clearance so that the dashpot can do its job. Adjusted too far out, the throttle will kick out instantly, risking a stall if it drops below idle. However, adjusted too far in, and the throttle will take too long to decrease. Thus, your brake is working against your throttle. A happy medium between two extremes is the most important thing here. I'm going to discuss changing out one of these and the testing I did in order to ensure that it's working correctly. With a dashpot or vacuum kicker, you set the curb idle by turning the adjustment screw built into the back of the chamber. Turn the anti-stall dashpot in a direction to provide the specified clearance between the tip of the plunger and the throttle lever. According to our trusty shop manual, an automatic anti-stall dashpot clearance of 7/64 of an inch is a good starting point. That's just a little bit under 1/8 of an inch. Our target idle speed we will assume to be 750 RPMs when the engine is cold, first started, and 500 RPMs after it's warmed up. This diagram illustrates the importance of setting our throttle body clearance against a fully depressed dashpot versus one that's fully extended. In this case, the red arrow indicates the dashpot fully compressed against the spring, while the green arrow indicates the dashpot fully extended with absolutely no pressure from the spring whatsoever. If we set our clearance between the 2 points of the green arrow, the dashpot will never touch the throttle plate. No functionality will take place. It's vital that we compress our dashpot and set our throttle body relative to the red arrow. Only then will our dashpot function properly as expected. With the narrated diagram portion out of the way, let's now move on to the video portion. Well, hello, John O'Flaherty, the B3 Burner here. Welcome. First car-related video of 2019. And the problems never stop. They're just a little bit different from time to time. Though this may not be a big problem, just something that needs to be addressed and taken care of. What I think we're having an issue with these days is a throttle release problem. And so I have gone and gotten this. This is what they call a... Darn it, I'm going to have to edit this awkward pause, I'm sure. A dashpot. And what it is when you release the throttle or the gas pedal, rather than letting it descend instantly back down to zero, which could cause the throttle curve to dip below idle speed and cause stalling, it's supposed to, this spring actuator is supposed to cause the throttle to descend gradually to idle speed, so that it doesn't do it instantly. It kind of almost like a door stop that lets the door close slowly instead of slamming. And it was brought to my attention that the old one might have been frozen up and stuck. So this one will hopefully address that issue. And I'll show you on the car what we've got. So as we look in the engine and at the carburetor, or to the left of the carburetor, driver's side, you can see that is the dashpot. And it is connected to the throttle linkage, more or less. This is the same piece. If I proceed to pointed in the right direction. I'm a little concerned about sizing and whether it's the correct size or not. I think the eBay seller I got this from has a return policy, but it did state that the fitment was appropriate for 1970 LTDs in addition to many other cars of the era, so hopefully it'll fit no problem. We shall see. But anyway, that's what I'm up against. And I will proceed to let you know whether everything turns out okay. Well, this is the old one, and yeah, I guess it looks pretty worn out now that you mention it. Now that I mention it. What happened is, there's a diaphragm inside that's supposed to move gradually, and it's more binary, like an on-off switch. It just is either all the way up or it's all the way down. In fact, it's kind of hard to show here, but stuck into the down position. It really has no spring. If I push on this with my thumb, it just moves in and stays in. Okay. Whereas, if we look at where I installed the new one, there it is. First thing you'll notice, ooh, nice, new, and shiny. Yeah. I think this is like an NOS part. When I pull that back, it acts as the diaphragm acts correctly, and it closes slowly. Now, I want to draw your attention to this nut, and I want you to notice the distance between here and here. And I could control the amount I screwed this threaded shaft in through this piece here. And then I cap it off and tighten it with the hex nut. Now my question, and I'm not so sure about this, I'm gonna look it up in the shop manuals and see if I can find any information on it, is do I get a different throw pattern depending upon how far in I thread this? In other words, if I take this end where my fingernail is and bring it all the way forward to this post that it's going through versus back it out and nut it down there, do I get a difference in how the does it function differently and how the Dashpot functions with the throttle? I think I'm going to have to experiment with that and come up with a determination, but in the meantime, I don't know. Okay, some late night musings right as we approach the midnight hour. As you know, earlier today, about 11 or 12 hours ago, maybe 10 at this point, I finished installing that Dashpot into the next to the carburetor up against the throttle arm. My only question was exactly how it gets installed, and I determined that my original assumption was incorrect. A fully compressed Dashpot piston or pin is to be compared against a fully loosened throttle arm. So the throttle arm is all the way loose, fully expanded, no tension on it. The piston of the Dashpot, on the other hand, is fully compressed and under load. In fact, they recommend you hold it down with a screwdriver head so that you can position it correctly. Based on that, you unscrew it and adjust it so that it is an 1/8 inch away from a totally loosened throttle plate with the pot fully, I'm about to lose my light there, fully compressed. I had originally thought it was to be an 1/8 inch. A fully loosened Dashpot was to be an 1/8 inch away from a fully loosened throttle plate. Well, that doesn't make any sense, because if they're an 1/8 inch away from each other, fully expanded or extended to loose, not under load, then they're never going to touch each other. So clearly, and that would have been like there was no Dashpot in the first place. So clearly that wasn't the case, and I wasn't thinking straight. Well, so all I did, I haven't even adjusted it to 1/8 inch yet. I'll do it later. I just adjusted it to how the old one was adjusted in the pictures and how the seller had it, which is to say, it is just arbitrarily set so that it's touching, the two are touching each other. And I don't even know what the tension distance is. Maybe it's an 1/8 of an inch, maybe it's not, but I have a feeling it's not. Upon my initial tests idling in the driveway, I determined exactly what would happen. It's working correctly. Rather than when you step on the gas and then suddenly let off, rather than it spiking steeply down like vroom, vroom, and dropping to a stall, you let off and it goes vroom, and it descends as a light curve. Now where it's at now, it might be descending too slowly, which of course presents the opposite problem. If you take your foot off the gas and it takes too long for throttle to come down, and you're braking because you need to come to a stop sooner than later, then you have your engine working against your brakes. So the opposite problem can ensue if the curve is too gradual. So we need to find the sweet spot in the middle where it's not dropping so fast that it drops below idle and stalls, but not so slow that we have a delay where we've got 3 to 5 extra seconds of descending idle or descending throttle where we don't want it, especially if we have to stop quickly. So what I'm going to do, let me test this out. So we're going to do that now and see what we come up with. So what we're listening for is when I step on the gas pedal here, does it go down instantly? Here, let me focus it a little better. Does it go down instantly? Hear how it takes a while to go back down? We want to see how it drives. And so that's what we're going to be doing here. Okay, so here are my observations thus far. I've pulled over into a card-locked gas station just so I can talk and hear myself think. The idle speed is a little high. I did adjust that. Maybe I should have left it alone. Okay, this one is not really visual. Folks, you got to use your ears on this one. Listen carefully. Can you hear the engine idle? It's a little high. I'm going to goose the gas pedal. Listen to how long it takes for the curve to come down. It didn't return immediately to idle like it used to. It took a while. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. About 4 extra seconds. That's enough to prevent it from stalling, especially if I have my left foot on the brake and gas it in drive. We used to torque the engine and stall it out. It's not going to do that anymore for 2 reasons. 1, we installed the new Dashpot, and 2, I raised the idle speed. But even if I lowered the idle speed and removed that variable, and the problem is, as a scientific test, I screwed it up by changing two variables at the same time, which you never do. Even if I lowered the idle, it wouldn't have the same problem it did before. So now I'm going to try the next test, which is with my foot. Let's release the emergency brake. With my left foot on the brake pedal. There we go. And my right foot on the gas, car and drive. We're going to goose it and see what it does. Not even close to stalling. It wants more, in fact. Egads. Now let's try the same thing in reverse. All it's doing is saying, I'm fighting against your brake and I don't like it, but it's not giving me any issue. So let's put it back in park, set our parking brake, and turn it around so it's viewing me, and there you go. That's what it's supposed to do. Now, bear in mind that's an incorrectly set Dashpot where I haven't even verified that compressed Dashpot against decompressed throttle handle has an 1/8 inch gap. If I gap it correctly, I bet it functions even better. Or at least the curve will be quicker. The curve is almost too shallow and it takes too long to decelerate. And like I said earlier, that creates the opposite problem where the engine is fighting against the brakes if I need to stop slowly or stop quickly. Now, the upside is no more stalling. The downside, like I just said. Now, the other issue is lower the, what am I trying to say? I'm distracting myself. Lower the idle speed, problem goes away entirely. Low idle will always be a problem when the car is cold, but when it's warmed up, it's almost idling a little too fast. Hear that? And on some cars with automatic chokes, quick goosing the engine slows the idle down. This one, it's not working. So anyway, we'll see how that goes.